Do you want to get married?
Yeah, I want to get married, but more out of necessity of like producing a male heir is really the whole point.
I love your face.
No, I'm just listening. I'm just observing. You can keep going. Continue.
She's like, we can keep going.
No, because I mean, I would prefer to get a handle on what you think from your mouth.
It's very Chinese of him,
anything.
though. You know, just only men. So he doesn't want any female children. It's very Chinese.
Yeah, no, I think they're awake on this question. You know, I mean, as far as like marriage
goes, it's more
goes,
about population control there rather than, you know.
Well, and it's like the old world stuff about like a dowry and like, you know, gendered stuff and all that. But, you know, at least for me, it's sort of like a pride thing. Like I want to produce a male heir to take on my name, take on my legacy and all that. And, you know, marriage is sort of pursuant to that goal. But, you know, I don't know about this whole prospect of like living with a woman for the rest of my life. Like, you know, it sounds good at first. It sounds like kind of fun or interesting. You don't have to do laundry. You know, you don't have to worry about
I get the idea of like wanting to pass on your name. Like I understand that, you know, okay.
Kind of taking care of the house. But, you know, then the prospect of just like, it goes on and on and on. And it's decade after decade after decade. And, you know, I don't know how thrilled I am with that whole idea. You know, I'm kind of a solitary individual. I like my privacy. I like my autonomy. And just the idea of like nagging GF, nagging wife. It's a little nightmarish to me.
Do you have a good relationship with your mom?
I love my mom. Yeah, I love my mom.
Is your mom a stay-at-home mom? What does she do?
Yeah.
Is your mom? That's a good question. I mean, like, this is going to be bad for Nick Fuentes. I don't understand, man. I think he just doesn't understand. Like, yeah, man, that's one of those things where it's like, I guess his mom is so amazing that the other women just can't live up to mommy, you know? I'm assuming that's what's going on here.
Yeah, so she works now, but, you know, when me and my sister were growing up, she raised me. She quit her job to stay at home and raise us.
And what's your sister like? Do you get on with her?
Yeah, she's my twin. She's probably the opposite of me. She's more calm, sort of introverted. Yeah, but we get along.
Do you respect women?
Of course.
But you just don't want them to have any rights?
Well, I didn't say that. I didn't say they shouldn't have rights.
But if I'm understanding your question correctly, if you don't want them to vote or drive or have an existence akin to what they would have in, say, Saudi Arabia, you would say that in large part, then they don't really have rights.
Well, I would say probably the ideal is something more like Afghanistan, if I'm being totally honest. Like
so what's the difference
recent
between Afghanistan then and Saudi Arabia?
Like the brutality, I guess it's like a little slightly more brutal. Of course, Taliban rule, not American rule. I'm talking about, you know, recent Afghanistan.
So you want women to have the same treatment as women have under Taliban rule in Afghanistan?
Something approximating that, yeah, because, you know, you think about...
Like, unironically, like, is this a joke? Like, I mean, like, listen, I'm an edgy guy, but what the fuck? What the fuck? Yeah, I don't... The assertion that he doesn't want any women to have rights seemed pretty much right on the nose there. Okay.
The Taliban and, you know, what they're able to achieve. Here you have these guys with nothing but, you know, some light arms and rags and 20 years, and they were able to defeat the largest military in history. I think that has something to do with the fact that they weren't, like, distracted. You know, they weren't distracted with the kinds of things we are in America.
Like, rules? I don't understand. Like, what's happening here? Is he praising their system? I don't understand. What the fuck?
They weren't being nagged. You know, they weren't being bossed around by
women. He just wants Taliban level rights for women. What the fuck?
You know, now they've got this society where there's this brutality, like I said, this old world sort of order. And you bring up like voting. I don't see really voting as a right, if I'm being totally honest. Like, it's not just women. There's a lot of people that really shouldn't be voting anymore.
Oh, like gay people, right? And like stuff like that. Black people. I don't know. Like, where's he going to go with this? What the fuck?
Such as?
You know, maybe people that don't own property, young people that work like retail jobs. Like, as an example... Really? Well,
no,
hear me out.
People that work retail jobs.
Well, or like service jobs.
This guy's fucking dumb as shit. I didn't know he was this fucking dumb. What the fuck? What an idiot. What? People don't retail jobs? What? What the fuck? Like, just people. People shouldn't have right unless they're like rich. I'm very confused.
It's like with the service that you're getting, it's like, man, you couldn't even get my change right. I don't know if you're going to be the president of the United States.
I was in Lowe's earlier.
I just feel like it's dumb. I mean, like, if you're what? I'm so confused. I don't know how to respond to this. This is like fucking insane. Like, those are still jobs that exist. If you think that people aren't smart enough to vote and be in favor of better education, what do you want me to tell you? What the fuck?
And a young man helped me who's actually a fan of both of us, who was super lovely, and I would like him to vote. He was great. He was very clever.
Well, you know, the thing about retail or these service jobs is like, you know, you look at these young people, it's a lot of millennials, Generation Z, and they really don't know how things work. You know what I mean? Like, if you own a business, if you own property, even if you're a homeowner.
Seems like you're kind of that guy too, brother.
You kind of have an idea of like how things work, you know, like where things come from and some idea of like how the economy works. And, you know, if your whole life is like, okay, you're in school, you're a student, you pay rent, you know what I mean? Like, you don't even manage like how your apartment runs. Like, how should you have a say in how the country is run? You don't even really know how anything comes together in society.
I mean, like, okay, like, we'll flip side that. Like, what about 60, 70, 80-year-olds who have nothing left? They don't care. They don't have to care about the future at all because they're going to be dead. Like, we could sit here and go back and forth with the pros and cons of young and old people voting, but they're citizens, and there's like an age of consent where you allow people to start voting and then you represent yourself. That's how it works. So you live in this society and then you have a say in the society. It's not like that's super complicated.
Society. So, the old way in America was that it was, of course, propertied white men. It was a very narrow group of people that were able to vote. And that's because
the good old days, right, Nick? What the this has to be satire.
The founding fathers didn't really believe in mass democracy, universal suffrage. They believed in checks and balances, and kind of voting was a part of like checking the power of the ruling class or the regime with the power of the people. But they weren't under any illusions about this idea that like every person should have a vote. One man, one woman, one child, one vote. They didn't believe that. So, that's not how the country was founded. That's not how the system was set up. And that was for a reason. So I think it was a big mistake in the past 100 years to just...
Are we saying that like not all men voted? I mean, like the women didn't vote, obviously, but I think all the men... I feel like most of the men... I feel like a good amount of the men voted. Am I wrong about that? Like, was our country just dog shit? I'm very confused. The founding fathers didn't believe in renting? Probably. I don't know.
Open it up to everybody. We have to think about how we're going to have competent government.
I feel like all men voted, right? Except for black men, right? But then we've allowed black people to vote, right? Because they're people, hot take. And then women, because women are people as well. Okay.
Who's going to make those choices? And we have to think competent people should be making those choices.
If I were to ask you, like, let's start with rights. Okay, let's start with access to something very simple. Let's go to an amendment. Let's go to 19th Amendment, right? Let's start there. Let's just start there.
Gone.
All right.
All right, what do you thought? All right, day one gone.
It shouldn't be there.
I have a question, though. Have you ever lived in any other country besides the United States?
Nope.
Okay, so when you talk about many of these things, these are just from an observational standpoint where you've done a lot of reading and observed a bunch of things.
Yes.
And then arrived at your conclusions based on that.
Yes.
But you have no practical experience living under, say, a more authoritarian rule.
No, well, I mean, I already live under something like authoritarianism in America. I'm on the no-fly list. I'm being persecuted. The thing is about authoritarianism is it can't be condemned in itself, because the character of the regime isn't really...
Is he really that? I'd like, listen, I don't really know much about Nick Fuentes other than one time he said something about me on like his podcast or something. Someone's like, "Oh, do you want to talk to Papa God about immigration?" Which I would never do because I'm not educated on that. And he's like, "Who's Papa God?" And then blah blah blah. I don't know. It's just a bunch of like fucking words. What this guy like that bad? Where he's on the no-fly list? Is he that fucking insane?
Authority. The authority is colored by the people that are in authority.
Not to interrupt you, sorry, but just to back up for a second. So you're currently on a no-fly list based on the authoritarianism that's going on in the country.
Right.
Now that authoritarianism you could argue is from the left, and the left are very happy that they have that authoritarianism. So what you want is right-wing authoritarianism.
Yes.
But your issue is with left-wing authoritarianism.
The problem is not authoritarianism. The problem is leftism.
What about the people on the left who think of you and go, well, I don't want to live under his rule of law? Because obviously there are people who don't think like you do.
This is the essence of politics. This is the essence of politics, is that there is an us and there is a them. There are right-wing people and there are left-wing people, and people have varying identities with different levels of salience. But yes, the problem is that we are not in control of the regime. Ultimately, the problem is not the regime itself or power, because the thing is, and this is the problem, is that conservatives are sort of naive about power. Power, is not, we're not getting rid of it anytime soon. This idea of like, take over the government to let everybody go and free the people. It's like there will always be concentrated, centralized power. And the question is, well, who's going to wield it? Are we
This is a literal Nazi? How the fuck does he, like, what? What the fuck?
going to forfeit the playing field to the left? This is essentially what conservatives have done because they're averse to rule. Like when conservatives get in control of Congress or the presidency, what do? Do they go aggressively like the left does and wield the bureaucracy and wield the Congress? Or do they kind of just, well, we're going to cut your taxes and we're going to do this and that. And then the left comes in with a vengeance and they say, we're going to use environmental regulations to take your gun rights. And we're going to use the IRS to go after conservative nonprofits. And we're going to do this. And we're going to solidify our rule. And then we are going to set the tone for the country. And conservatives then, even like when Trump gets into office, it's like, what did we accomplish in the first 2 years? When we had Congress, we had the courts, we had the White House, we did a corporate tax cut, barely repealed Obamacare. That's about it. We should have built a wall. We should have went after the endowments for the universities. We should have targeted left-wing institutions. We should have opened up the libel laws and went after the media. So, conservatives just aren't playing the game. We've got to wake up to the reality of power politics, engage and play. And so back to the original point, the problem is not that there is power, that there is authority. There will always be authority. There has to be authority. The question is who is going to...
Well, I don't think authority equals authoritarianism, right? Am I saying that word right? Like too much authority, right? Because we have authority, but we don't have an authoritative government. I wouldn't say so. I'm just very confused. What the fuck's happening here? What are we advocating for? Women not to have right? It sounds like his entire political stance is like T-square based, like T-pose based. You know what I mean?
Wield it. And, right-wing people have to do that, which is why I said earlier, if Trump became like, the Caesar of America, hypothetically, if he had got in 2016 and said, you know what, I'm not leaving, and the courts tell me that I have to leave, well, I'll disobey them, and he went full, Andrew Jackson, I would support it. I wouldn't say, this is authoritarianism. This is in principle wrong. I would say, this is a right man for the job. This is a rightful ruler of America. And, you know, and I would be okay with that.
You know, you bring up Caesar, but didn't that end pretty poorly for them?
No, the empire.
The empire ended pretty poorly, I think.
Yeah, after like, you know, hundreds of years.
Well, we've been around for about 400. How many we got left?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's just it. The Roman Republic was around, and then it gave birth to a true empire ruled by Caesar, and then, you know, they reached their zenith under the empire. So I don't necessarily think that's the worst thing in the world.
I just find it interesting though that you're you know, promoting these ideas having not ever lived under them. I just find that that's such a it's, you know, it's hard to say let's paint the entire house blue when you've never seen a blue house.
Well, I mean, do I need to go to Russia to?
Yes, probably.
Why? I mean, why?
I mean, I'll give you an example. A very good friend of mine who I've known for about 10 years. used to be-
Russia sucks living there, right? Unless you're a white guy and rich, then you're all good. That's what I'm saying.
very much like you actually. And he, you know, he's someone who used to really, really prop up authoritarianism. He used to, and he still believes this in part, that people do need to be governed to a large extent because people, you know, left alone are morons. And that's not saying necessarily that I even disagree with. I think your average person is probably as dumb as a bag of rocks. However, he moved to Singapore, which you could argue is not the worst place in the world. Obviously, it's quite clean. People, you know, follow the law. The crime rate is reasonably low. But after about 2 years of living in Singapore, where they knock on your door, and this has happened to him, where he got dobbed in by his neighbors for having water on his balcony, and they said it's causing a mosquito problem. Now we're at your house, prepared to fine you over mosquitoes. He said to me, I hate living in this country. I hate the authoritarianism here. I hate the way that things operate.
That's what got him, the mosquitoes. I feel like that's probably a reasonable thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm just an authoritarianism. I'm an authoritative guy. I just fucking hate mosquitoes, man. So if there's a pool of water making mosquitoes, I call the cops, bro. I call the cops. You're a little too loud. Fuck you. Call the cops on this motherfucker. Hey, there's mosquitoes. Grow a mosquito. Free country, bitch. Imagine that. Is that the most American thing about America? Is that you're allowed to grow mosquitoes in your backyard that terrorize the neighbors? There's got to be a better example. If the mosquito thing is what pushed him over the edge, I mean, holy fuck.
Because coming from Australia, he's an Aussie. He was like, I much prefer the way that we do things back home, or at least, you know, the freedom that we have in living in a country where that's staunched in some capacity was really, and is and continues to be very bothersome and trying for him. And so I just find it interesting though that you've only ever lived in the United States. I just you can only do so much reading before practical experience actually should take, you know, some sort of precedence. And I mean, I say the same thing about women too. I mean, I dare say, from my understanding of many of your viewpoints, you also promote like the way of interacting with women. And I go, have you been in a relationship with a woman?
No.
So how are you telling other people how to behave towards women when you yourself have not had any actual physical, you know, interaction with them in a romantic capacity, or in fact in any capacity where you know, uphold them in a way that treats them with respect? I mean, if you're out here arguing that women are basically half the value of, well, you know, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, in fact, because that's not right. But you know, if you are looking to some other regimes around the world that do think that women are half the value of a man, I have to question what kind of a person who's had no experience with women is in a position to you know, basically promote these ideas.
Well, I'm having an experience with a woman right now, and I've had lots of experiences with women in my life, not romantically per se, but you know, I've talked to.
What? This not romantically per se? Is this guy legitimately a fucking virgin? Like, I know it's a stereotype to like bully people, mostly men, for being a virgin, but it's kind of bully worthy a little bit. I mean, especially if you think that you could talk about it's just a weird thing to talk about women if you can't even get a woman to fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, even misogynistic men that treat women like shit can get pussy. So how the fuck can't you? How are you this like? How is he like basically Ben Shapiro without any of the intelligence? Or pussy pull. I mean, Ben Shapiro made a whole song about how wet pussy was actually a medical condition, and even he's pulling more than Nick Fuentes. Like, that's embarrassing, bro. That's embarrassing. You should feel, this is the problem. This is what happens. See, this is the issue in the world. Isn't like unintelligence necessarily. The issue is confidence. How are you so fucking confident? Like, you are by all real metrics an undesirable person. Like, what's the point? Like, the point of life, you know what I mean, is to propagate more life, and that's what he thinks. You know, like, you might be somebody that's like, I don't agree. The point of life is to be successful, whatever. His whole thing, we just talking about, maybe we didn't watch it yet. I watched like a clip of it, but the whole thing is to have like a fucking kid and propagate your existence, and you can't even. That's like the base level. You haven't even necessarily had an interaction with like a sexual interaction with a woman. What the fuck, bro? What are you doing? I'm fucking morbidly obese, bro, and I pull. Ow, how the fuck are you? How, bro? What the fuck?
Enough women. I've known enough women to know sort of what's going on.
Hold on.
Not romantically.
Promote these ideas.
Well, I'm having an experience with a woman right now, and I've had lots of experiences with women in my life, not romantically per se, but.
Oh, bro, come on.
And I've talked to enough women. I've known enough women to know sort of what's going on. I
Like
think any man who is observant enough, and honestly, you know, like I said, we could go back to great geniuses. We could go back to people that have been in relationships. Like, a perfect example is like the pickup artists. You know, have you ever noticed that pickup artists who have the most relationships with women and the most sex, what they say is that really with women, it's the same bag of tricks to seduce a woman or whatever.
Yeah, they're a little misogynistic, but they don't generally advocate for non-voting for women or going to school. I'm assuming that's what did they reference Afghan rule that he praised? I don't remember if we've watched it yet. I watched a clip, but is that what I don't think that they would be like, yeah, do that. No, what the fuck?
I think that kind of tells you something about the nature of women, that, you go from woman to woman. It's the same kind of like little tricks, little things you could say or whatever to
It's kind of the same thing with men. I mean, you go from man to man, it's pretty similar to each other. Obviously, like there's once you get very personal, it becomes more, more nuanced, especially if you want to develop a long-term relationship with somebody. You need to be able to, ingrain yourself into them. But like men and women, we're all pretty much as a fucking rule book for like the generalities of them. And then things get more complicated as more depth is added. Maybe he's gay and hates himself. I wouldn't doubt it, bro.
Hack them and whatever. And I think that kind of says it all about their nature. So
What does it say about our nature?
Well, it says that, they're not fully rational. I don't believe that, like men, they possess a sort of full rationality. I think that
rationality towards what specifically?
Rationality
just
entirely,
generally?
sort of objective. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think they're capable.
It's very interesting. I'm actually, because I have a little bit of an anecdote for this. I've been watching the show Easy with my wife. Very interesting show. And you should watch it. It's on Netflix. I think they ended it, but it's got 3 pretty good seasons. Every episode, whatever. That doesn't matter. They develop these 2 characters throughout the show. One's a man, one's a woman. How they're like best friends. And he's having a problem with like somebody kind of like claiming abuse of power on him from like 20 years ago when he was a teacher. He dated a student, like he was a teacher, like I think he was in his 30s or something, and the student was in their 20s. It wasn't like super inappropriate. Anyway, he was dealing with that issue, and during that, he slept with his best friend. That's a girl, and they were like older at this point. And he was upset because somebody was writing a book about him, a book about their life, and he was part of it. And he felt like it was going to ruin his career, and like he didn't do anything wrong. And so she, though, after they slept together, was very focused on the fact that they slept together for the first time. And he was trying to talk about his problem to his like best friend, and she was being like generally dismissive because she was like, now that they were together for a long time, like just friends, but then they broke that barrier of sex, and now she like had a lot of like a very big emotional connection, like a pouring out. And I remember sitting there and I was like, this is like, I don't know why she's not being more supportive. Like this situation kind of seems to suck for him a bit. I know, I do understand the power dynamic and whatnot, but there's also like he didn't, have the intention, et cetera, et cetera. And my wife was like, shut the fuck up. Like, she's right. And I was like, really? It was very interesting because I would say like from the more objective I would say from the more rational perspective, like he has to deal with his career first. But she's like, no, like this was a huge emotional breakthrough for her and for him and their relationship. And this is very changing. And he's not being sensitive to that at all. Very interesting. 2 different perspectives. Very interesting. It was just interesting that the men and women have 2 different perspectives. I don't know that I would say that mine's like objectively correct though, because it was actually very enlightening and interesting to learn from my like my wife's perspective and the woman's perspective. Because I always watch TV from this understanding or this thought. I always thought that there was a message that's trying to be communicated by the person who makes the story, and that everybody gets that message, and everybody they operate like watching the show through that message. And I realized that's not true in all media. And this show obviously had like interpretation differences and whatnot. This is very interesting. Anyway, just to settle it up real quick, he ends up learning that like he was shittier to that girl that he was dating, etc. But watch the show yourself. Anyway, just a little bit of an observation.
Capable of that. I think that, a male has a real impersonal sense of rationality and reason. I think that a female sense is far more personal. And that derives from the fact that women
let men die earlier because they don't want to go to the doctor. That doesn't sound super rational to me, man. I don't think men are like these fucking like, pinnacles of rationality as we think.
Made to bear children. Women are made with their wombs to bear children. And so I think their whole consciousness is basically, it's wrapped up, it's bound up in this idea that they've got to carry a child and then raise a child. And I think that the impersonality, rationality, objectivity suffers from this.
What the fuck?
But in any case, to get back to the original question, which is about experience.
That is a very interesting, like women are like, of course, I think that women are biologically attuned to have children. They want to have children more than men usually, I think. That doesn't mean that that's the entire personality of all women. Like that's just fucking insane.
I don't think that I need to live in Russia to know that we would rather have right-wing people running America than left-wing people. I think that's kind of an asinine sort of thing, which people like to trot out and they say, well, you haven't, we could qualify with all kinds of things, but the way that we live in America is unacceptable. I mean, there's homeless people everywhere.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting, the cognitive dissonance that he's engaging in, because just before he was saying that young people shouldn't vote because they haven't experienced life. And now her argument's like, you haven't experienced the life that your goal life of like right-wing authoritarianism. And you're saying that's so great. And he's like, I don't need to. And it's like, so then by your own logic, those people should definitely be able to vote because they don't need to have those experiences that you were just like, you need to have this experience in order to vote. It doesn't really make make any sense how he's engaging in that's like this. It doesn't that those two things don't really, it doesn't make sense to me. I would say that you need to live through an experience, or you should live through an experience if you want to have the best case of talking about that experience. It makes the most sense. But like, he can't even keep consistent with his thought. Like, you can't say, I don't need to live in Russia to know that like Russia's better, effectively what he's saying, because it's like right wing, more authoritative. But then say that young people shouldn't be able to vote because they haven't experienced like the true life, like working and paying bills to the same capacity. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
Crime's out of control. It's a corrupt country. It's a failing country. And, we want to have
countries, Nick, around
leadership.
the world that have right-wing leadership still have many of those issues. And in fact, they're exacerbated oftentimes by the governments that are in power. So, and I would say too, I mean, I think it's a bit of a straw man to say that what I'm arguing here, I'm not even arguing, I'm just posing questions really, because I'm interested to hear your viewpoints. However, I'm not saying, I mean, I agree with you in the sense that we should have, right-wing leadership. I prefer to live under a right-wing government, so to speak, although I'm more on Eric's side of things these days, where I'm edging closer and closer towards anarchism. But, I'm not suggesting that I would rather a left-wing government over a right-wing one. I'm simply saying, having never lived under the autocratic rule that you seem to be promoting in some capacity, I'm having a hard time understanding how you can say that this would be the best way to go about doing things when you actually have no practical experience. That's all
where
it is.
Do we see? I'm wondering
that's
right
all
now,
I'm saying.
where do we see Christ-based like theocratic? I think isn't that more of what you're for? Is like more like a
Theocracy?
monarchy?
No, you're talking about theocracy.
No, but not necessarily just theocracy. But I'm just saying, like, in some way with authority.
Like Iran.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
You mean like divine right king?
But I'm saying that's Muslim. Yeah, but like a Christian version of, let's just say, maybe a Christian version of Iran, but not the exact government system. I'm just saying, like, where do we actually see that? Because I could just be sounding like an idiot here, but I don't know if we have any of that sanctified or left in its own original state of like a Christian autocratic type of rule. Do we have that? I don't know where we have it.
Not
on a large
in this day and
scale.
age.
Like,
Not in this day and age.
like Poland, kind of, but not really. Like, that's what
More
I'm
like
saying.
Hungary. More like Hungary would be more comparable because, Viktor Orban, who's not perfect, but he's very good. In Hungary, he articulated, I think a few years ago, he gave a speech at a university and talked about a new Christian nationalism in Europe, as opposed to, other forms of nationalism or other kinds of democracy, and articulated, and it's not quite, what I'm talking about, a sort of autocratic rule inspired by religion, but it's a closer approximation of that. But you're right, we don't really have that. And is this a symptom of modernity? Is this liberalism? It's probably been, 100 years since we've had any kind of meaningful Christian autocratic rule anywhere in the world. And
we've made a lot of progress in those. Like the last 100 years, I think were like our most progressive years, or the years that we had the best technological progress, right? The Industrial Revolution. Maybe I'm just dumb. I'm pretty sure we made a substantial progress. I think the biggest reason why religion isn't at the forefront of a lot of our society is because honestly, they just hate gay people. I know this sounds insane, but like when you know a gay guy and you're like, they're not so bad, and then you have a religion telling you that they're like horrible and they need to die, you're thinking in your head, you're like, maybe this ain't it, it's kind of true. Is there any LGBTQ inclusive religion? I don't think in any textbook capacity, at least nothing popular. Most religions just hate gay people, which is weird. So, I mean, there are people who are accepting in religious communities of gay people, but the religions themselves aren't inherently accepting of gay people. Like the most accepting you're going to get from a very devout, religious individual is like, oh, I think you're going to die and go to hell, but you're still a person, so I'm not going to treat you like shit. Or like you can be gay, you just can't act on that thought. Things like that.
all you have to look at is the experience of history.
Somebody from Hungary said that they live there, and it's horrible in my chat. So,
this experiment of overthrowing the kings and overthrowing the gods, it's been a complete disaster. I mean, think about how Europe and America used to be 100 years ago. I mean, it's no contest compared to the kind of scum and degeneracy and the awful things that we see today. And all that we want is
I feel like we just see more bad things today because we have the internet. Like, you could see bad. Like, when I was young, I came across fucking dead bodies on 4chan. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anything's gotten any worse. I think that you can just see it more readily now, and so you think it's worse. It's a very different thing. And I think that people are conflating the two. They're saying, well, I see bad thing, so that means that the world is worse. And it's like, I think that that's probably not true at all. The world's probably a lot better now, at least for more people, like, us living in America or a first world country. Even if you're struggling in a first world country, you're living better than probably your average American 100 years ago, honestly. So this is insane.
Restoration of that. And I'm a real conservative in the sense that I don't believe that we're going to get to heaven on this side of death, right? So I don't know that we're going to get to I don't know. We're not going to have a perfect society, but it's a question of what kind of a society are we going to live in? What kinds of problems do we want? Do we want to have the excesses perhaps of a Christian autocratic rule and sometimes the cruelty problems or things that come with that? Or do we want to...
No, I want to be able to jerk off to porn. Honestly, that's it. I mean, you can't look at porn or jerk off, and I literally I like this society better because I could jerk off to pornography. That's it. I don't give a fuck, dog. And you know what? Sometimes I could jerk off to gay porn, and I don't care. I'm not even kidding. I fucking want to be able to jerk off to any porn I want. So mostly femboys. But like, dude, yeah, okay. And what are we dealing with now? Like a lot of dumb kids. Like, okay, that's life, brother. Life is dealing with dumb fucking kids. So yeah.
To live in the environment we live in now, where mankind is killing itself. You know, people are not having children, and it's sickness and depravity, and children are being harmed and corrupted. I mean, I don't think it gets very much worse than where we are today, outside of some exceptional circumstances in history. So to me, that's really the real. It's about what kind of society, what's the character of the country we want to live in.
What I will say is that I agree with Nick on the sense that, yeah, when leftists get power, unlike what the conservatives do, they are full steam ahead, and they will punish their political enemies. They will rule over them, and
conservatives don't do that. What about like gerrymandering? Does that not happen on both sides? I feel right.
I think it got that way, and that's just not really to my point because of this long-term sort of infiltration process where they got basically hold of every single institution, and now we just kind of see it come into fruition more than what we've ever had because we can see it. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, the biggest problem is that like literally we're camped into conservative and like progressive, like Republican and Democrat. We're incredibly divided, and so when you look at it, like Republican versus Democrat, generally speaking, you're picking like the lesser of two evils based on whatever your moral code is, and it depends on what you're more valued. Like people who generally vote conservative, in my experience, are people who are just more money focused. They don't care about the other shit. Unfortunately, the lack of human rights comes with that, right? People who vote more progressive usually want more human rights, and then they take away some fucking weird shit. They overtax the fuck out of you and shit. I get it. We need to split like 5 parties. Andrew Yang Forward Party. Boom. Follow them on Twitter. I don't know.
I mean, social media, technology, all of this connectivity. Where I differ is more so because I don't see the conservatives as, okay, wielding it and doing nothing. I think of it more as, to me, and maybe this is just through my lens, in that they ensure the power structure of leftists. And they set them up for success to then fuck us over. Let's call it what it is. And again, when I say punish their political enemies, I want to be direct and I want to be clear here. I see them as the direct enemy here, considering all the subcultures that I'm involved in, and they're controlled by leftists, and they've been running the bitch into the ground for as long as I've been alive. It's just been accelerated over certainly the last decade. But I would much rather, and going back to my original point of like pulling the rug certainly from under them, because yeah, I can understand that at least in our lifetimes with government, it may be present in this geographical area. Is that going to be difficult to get away from? Potentially. However, I do think the scale of that can certainly change within our lifetimes. I do think that that's certainly achievable.
But I am saying that on the side note, you were noting because yes, we have special buttons and we can chat to each other on the show. Is that Sydney doesn't know anything about you really. I mean, besides what she's heard on there, and she's like.
And I do want to say, I've said I do know many of your views on women, which I find abhorrent. I'm going to be honest. I don't agree with you in any capacity on that front. For obvious.
So this is a part of this podcast, just so you guys know. This way I can like make sure that this is part of this. This is just the bit where Nick Fuentes is fucking going ballistic. Or where this girl nay-nays on Nick Fuentes.
But I actually went into this reasonably not really knowing your broader views on things, and so I don't really have an opinion of you, if I'm honest. And so that's why, I mean, it's really funny. People are like, Sydney's really triggered. And I'm honestly just sitting here just listening and just, getting a feel for things. But I was saying to Elijah, it's interesting. I think you're being very respectful. And I think that's really nice because people make you out to be this, assassin that's going to just stab everybody in the face.
Well, no, he's just a fucking beta. Like,
and I think you are being very respectful, and you're obviously very polite in person. But dude, your followers are very interesting people.
Yes.
And I find it interesting how you appear certainly one way in person. And I would say you're nice in person, and then in the chat I don't understand. Are you aware that your followers are like this?
Well, they're very animated, very enthusiastic. The thing is that the thing about our people, me and my followers, is that we are really oppressed in a big way. And so you really can't divorce this from how we are. I mean, when you take a look at my followers.
Why are they oppressed? I'm curious. What makes them oppressed?
There's a groypers or somebody like myself.
Because they can't get pussy?
I mean, we really have been treated unfairly by society. And, some people say, hey, your followers aren't very polite, or they're very
I
rowdy.
think it's more than that, Nick.
How?
Like, for example, they attack Elijah personally. They attack me personally.
There's a phrase for being called groiped, right? Am I right?
I don't think that.
Got groiped.
I mean, you can extend this into other people who've been horrible to you personally, and that's completely fair. If they, want to go for them, fine. But if I'm just asking you questions merely to dig into your viewpoints, which I think is a fair thing to do on a show like this, I don't know why anybody would turn that into a personal attack. Now, I don't care. Like, do whatever. Like,
I think the word you're looking for is pieces of shit.
Well, I mean, it's just like I don't get it. Like, and if you do think you're oppressed, which is
but that's what I'm getting at, is that's why there's sort of a defensive posture. Is because if you look at my experience and the experience of people that I know, it's being subject to horrible lies and slander, and so
but Nick, all of us are though in this space.
But not really quite on the same level.
dude, have the stuff that this kid's been exposed to? I mean, like, he's on the same level as.
But
well.
I did have a federal credential, so I got it. But I did get. I'm saying, like, did you read? I'm gonna tell you this. Did you read how
Yes.
he got rid of his Twitter's ADL
Yes,
expose?
I did actually. Yes, I did see that.
Trying to say this, so like I know you're explaining this, so I really am not trying to get in the way. But what is so interesting was that if you read the ADL thing, and you laugh at this too. Like I started to think about this of why Nick Fuentes is evil, right? So like, because I know that this is what everybody does. And the first time I had to interview him, I got this whole email with all this shit I had to add before I introduced him. But it's like everybody's always like, oh, Nick's evil. Like the only reason why people think he's evil and like go on that is because the gatekeepers that hate him, people are afraid of pissing them off. Because when you really look into Nick's like life, people are like, but he's an anti-Semite. And so first of all, but people say this, right? And it's like, well, why? And it's like he made this joke about cookies and the Jews, and I go, okay, I don't know about you, but I'm not a bitch enough to actually care about that. Like I literally the humor thing.
Well, I mean, like I don't know. I mean, listen, I don't know enough about Nick Fuentes. Maybe he's not all these horrible things, but he sounds. I don't know. From what I've seen, he's legitimately doesn't respect women. Like, and he's not marketable to women. He's kind of like or men. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, maybe if he is. I don't know, but it's like he seems like a fucking like kind of a loser. He doesn't respect women. He's advocating for like a country, or he's looking at other countries, I guess like Afghanistan, that are very aggressive when it comes to, was it Afghanistan? Well, gay rights. I mean, like it sounds like he might actually be those things. Maybe they're just funny meme jokes to him, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to lose my sleep and like cry because Nick Fuentes exists, but he seems like a piece of shit. So
Thing like it's like
people are telling me he loves Catboys unironically. Very interesting.
people always say, well, I wouldn't say that. I've not.
I want
I've
to
said
ask
that.
what this is, but
well,
I don't know. Not
No, no, but
YouTube already hates us.
Yes, but I'm saying no, but I'm saying like,
show me afterwards.
It's like,
and then I
okay,
can
so
understand,
if you
'cause
wouldn't,
I don't know what that is.
No, but if you wouldn't say it, then just don't say it. But did you really think someone's evil because they made a joke? And then it's like,
the
well,
water may have.
yeah, but you're not supposed to question that. It's like, well, I come from the intellectual movement where literally you can question anything, and it doesn't mean that anytime someone's trying to say that you're immoral for asking questions or clearly have bad motives, are ignorant or a part of something, whether it's the pandemic or climate change, let people ask questions. And it's so funny because when I read the ADL defamation article about him, it was like 90% of the things that they said about him that were evil were just like normal mainstream conservative like ideas. It was like he questions the election and he believes in right wing authoritarianism, and it was like he believes the right wing should be the only wing, and then it's like
I feel like most conservatives don't think that last thing specifically. I don't think that most conservatives think that the right wing should be the only wing. That's not a common conservative thought process. That's at all. What are you talking about? What? Most conservatives I've met, they're not upset that progressives exist. They just want to have their say. What the fuck? What the fuck is happening? What? Did I mishear him?
questions the election. Said about him that were evil were just like normal mainstream conservative like ideas. It was like he questions the election and he believes in right wing authoritarianism, and it was like he believes the right.
Wait, what? He's saying that that's a normal conservative perspective?
Conservative like ideas. It was like 90% of the things that they said about him that were evil were just like normal mainstream conservative like ideas. It was like he questions the election and he believes in right wing authoritarianism, and
That's not a normal conservative perspective. What the fuck is happening here? Who are these people? They're fucking insane.
it's like he believes the right wing should be the only wing, and then there's like the only.
None of those things are a normal conservative perspective in any capacity. That's just authoritarianism, like, or right wing authoritarianisms, autocrats. That's what the fuck.
Part that's like probably different than the
I
average
don't think it makes you evil. I think it makes you dumb. You're just a fucking idiot.
person is that he's made inappropriate jokes on camera versus people have probably made similar jokes off camera. And I read it and I was waiting for it to be like called for arms, called for terrorism, called for the Ku Klux Klan to be reinstated, called for lynchings. Like I'm going through this article. It's so in depth. And it's basically the end of it was like this.
I don't know. I make a lot of edgy jokes, and like, you know, I've made some. TikTok's a little bit of a sensitive space. I actually don't think I've ever been called a white supremacist though, even on TikTok. So I mean, but on YouTube I make jokes all the time. Nobody really cares. They laugh. They're like, "Oh, Papa, that was edgy," you know, because I make them without the intention of them being like hurtful. Like it's like they're literally just jokes. So I feel like there's probably a little bit of depth here.
He makes bad jokes and he says sarcastic things, and he also doesn't know if Biden was there because of votes. And I like read it. I'm like, this is the worst hit.
What? He doesn't know if Biden was there because of votes? I mean, listen, like I know, like listen, like my family, some of my older people in my family are conservative, and like yes, some of them were like, yeah, I think the mail-in stuff was a little sketchy, and like I've talked to them about it, but they're like, yeah, Biden's our president, like that's it. There's no fucking, they're coping pretty well. It's not like normal to think that Biden like didn't win. That's weird. I don't know.
Piece on this guy. And then I realized, but like she was saying, it occurred to me, why everyone thinks Nick is the worst guy in the world is because of the way his followers act towards people, and they can't disconnect. No, but I'm saying, like, they can't disconnect because they hear things about you that are exaggerated, but then they interact with, like, you get griped, and they get these people, so they assume they connect, like, Nick is just trying to, like, infiltrate and hurt my life. But
well, yeah, but here's the problem, right? Here's the thing. Does Nick talk that, like, does he speak out against that behavior from his fans? is there a big problem with his fans being really toxic and he goes, guys, you need to stop being toxic, like this isn't good? Or does he encourage the behavior? Because that is an incredibly important question, because it seems like he encourages the behavior. Maybe he doesn't, maybe I'm wrong, maybe he talks about it all the time, guys, you need to chill. But it seems like he encourages the behavior because he thinks it's funny. So like, yes, it's fair to criticize him based on his fans.
When people meet you, like, shit, it's just like, this is actually not who I thought I was about to meet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a polite, amicable. I'm a human being. I'm a human being. I'm a free thinker. And ultimately, my job is to provoke. Like when I decided to do my show, I wanted to do something novel. A lot of people when they were my age or even my age now, and they start a podcast, they want to start a podcast and they want to do like the Ben Shapiro show too. Like I'm going to do a show and say the same things that Shapiro does or the same things that, their favorite commentator does. And my idea was, well, I want to go and say what I think, my original thoughts, my thinking. And I think that
what's your point? Do you think that people that like, do you think like Ben Shapiro, for instance, isn't saying his original thoughts? Like, are you saying that that's a weird thing to say? Your thoughts are just fucking bonkers, bro. Like you're doing the same thing as everyone else. Your thoughts are just fucking insane. Unless you're saying that I like to dial up the fucking diarrhea dial on what I like to say so that I'm not like other people. Well, that's just being intentionally misleading. I don't understand.
It's so boring. The expectation that we're going to be in media. We're in this disastrous time right now, catastrophic time. And we're all supposed to go on here and just say, hi, well, great to be here. I love low taxes and I'm a conservative and all this kind of stuff. And like the idea of my show is like, let's be provocative. Let's play devil's advocate. When I say things about like, we should be more like the Taliban, it's partly joking, but there's also partly truth. And that's sort of meant to...
What the fuck? This isn't helping. What the fuck's happening here? Nick Fuentes is fucking insane. I'm kind of joking about being like the Taliban, but, they make good soup. What the fuck is happening?
Us out and antagonize, interrogate the truth and arrive at maybe, if we can think about the world in a different way, in a way that, maybe we don't think about it usually, in a way that some people think is abhorrent, maybe we could arrive at something more true. Certainly.
Yeah, I'd rather not. Like, I'm not really looking at the Taliban in any capacity. Like, what's one thing that they have that I feel like we need? Like, nothing at all.
Something more interesting. And I guess that's the biggest problem is, I'm
not going to be more open-minded to terrorism. I'm so confused. Or like regressive rights for groups that he doesn't give a shit about. I guess that's what it is.
I don't want to say that my whole life...
cool hats. You're right about that, actually. You got me on that one. Fuck. Fuck.
Of course, I'm self-righteous and I'm fighting for a cause. But a lot of it is just mischief. A lot of it's just fun. A lot of the things that I do and say, I do without thinking sometimes because they're funny, because they're interesting. It's like, what if we just run with this? Like the Cookie Monster thing or whatever. I'm not the kind of guy that says, oh, no, we can't say that on this show. That is reprehensible. Because we're all...
I'm not even going to look into the Cookie Monster thing. It's probably bad. Is it bad? Let's see. I don't know if I could find it. I can't find it. I'm not even going to look because I feel like this is a bad idea. It's probably going to have something to do with putting Jews in an oven. Is that what it is? That's the fun gag, Okay.
We're all in this life, and
that's all I could think of. Cookie Monster eats cookies. Cookies would be in this scenario the Jewish people. Like that. Am I right about that? I don't even want to look into it. I'm happy I couldn't find it. Is what I would say.
I think you have to have a sense of humor about it, and that's just one of the things that they weaponize. If you have a sense of humor, if you have any degree of authenticity or realness.
Shapiro was really mad about that.
Well,
but to your point, Elijah, go ahead. So hold on.
Shapiro's Jewish. So, yeah.
I get what you're saying. Like, maybe
he like harassed Ben Shapiro at one point, didn't he? Like he had like the clips, like the edgy clip where he was like running out on a Jewish person and killing them, and then I could see why Ben Shapiro doesn't want to associate themselves with Nick Fuentes.
Jokes and being funny, or at least trying to get trying to antagonize people. That's one thing. There's plenty of people who do that. Like, you're not the first person to try it, and obviously you're quite successful at it. But I would say, don't you think to some extent that polarizing people doesn't reach? If you really want to get your point across, and you really want to change people's minds, and you really want to push this agenda that you have here to push, because obviously you have strong feelings, and obviously you care about the trajectory of America, probably even the planet, and you do care about right-wing values, and you do care about conservative values. So do you think that perhaps to some extent polarizing people who otherwise might listen to you is maybe not the best course of action? Because obviously there are people who are going to love you regardless, right? There are people who automatically agree with you, who think you're fantastic, and a lot of them in our chat at the moment who really, really think you're wonderful. But then there's a bunch of people who might, warm to your ideas if you weren't saying like, yeah, let's do this, that, and the other, things that they might find inaccessible. Like,
when you say it like that, it's a good thing he's an antagonistic dick because his ideas are worthless. So
I guess I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but in my opinion, the truth is polarizing. When Jesus came, he said, "I came to divide people. I came to bring a sword. I'm going to separate people in their own houses." And I think this kind of equivocating, like, well, I understand your perspective.
Jesus was a Jew, bro. Hot take.
Listen, I think this kind of equivocation that people does is actually doing more harm than good because it obfuscates the real truth. And when I come on my show, it's raw, it's uncut, like the truth is. And I'm giving it to people, I'm delivering it to people, and they might not like it. Some people, I think it resonates very strongly, and they like that. The biggest problem is the people who are righteous in this country, I think are too timid. You know, they don't have the boldness. They don't have the courage to alienate people. You know, particularly with conservatives, they want to be liked by everybody. You ever notice this? Liberals don't care if conservatives like them. Conservatives really care that liberals like them, and they.
I feel like that's not true at all. What? Where? Am I just like completely out of touch? Because I feel like none of that's true at all. I feel like it's a fucking shit throwing festival back and forth.
Talk in such a way that they want liberals to like them, and they want women to like them, they want black people to like them. You hear conservatives talk about race, and they're tiptoeing around it, very delicate, walking on eggshells because we don't want to offend the black people.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with not wanting to offend? Black people are actually rather conservative, generally. I mean, they vote Democrat most of the time, but they're not like fucking progressive for the most part. They're actually pretty conservative. Anyway, what the fuck what is wrong with like not wanting to offend black people? Hey, what's wrong with not wanting to offend the blacks, Nick? You know, I don't understand. This is fucking insane. I'm so confused.
And same thing with women. Well, we got to be delicate about it. We don't want to offend the women. And you know, I think a lot.
Yeah, I don't want to offend women or black people. What the fuck? Why is that a bad thing to not want to do that thing? What the fuck? It's just called basic human decency. Like, yeah, I don't want to offend. Oh, you just don't want to offend the blacks or the bitches. It's like, what the fuck? What the fuck's happening? I gotta stop making that joke though. But you get my point. It's like, what is this so offensive? Why is this such a bad thing to treat people like people?
A lot of this is because of the society that we live in, where you've got to sell products to a mass audience of people from different races and different genders, and we live in a mass democracy, and you've got to win all the votes. But me, as somebody that is strictly an entertainer and a truth teller, I'm really unconcerned with the sort of popularity of my personage or
what does a truth teller mean to you, Nick?
my views. I'm about going in there and saying what needs to be said. And if people are influenced by that, and they want to go and play that game and equivocate, and they want to say, well, I think what Nick is trying to say is, you know, they can go and do that, but I'm really more, to me, my concern is just getting that message out there and getting the truth out there. And people, I think, should be more concerned about telling the truth, being real, being raw, being who they are, than sort of overthinking into this sort of self-conscious, like, how are we going to cleverly maneuver and strategize?
I feel like I'm pretty, like, raw as a content creator, and I feel like I still manage to respect people. You know, there's a difference between, like, not saying the truth and just making sure that when you say your truth, you're trying not to be offensive about it. That's what the fuck.
Like, I'm just going on my show live every night and saying, listen, here's how it is. I'm independent. I'm a free thinker. I'm not paid by anybody. I don't have to worry about sponsors. Here's the real deal. And so that's my philosophy.
You know, Alex Jones said something similar, but he also came to learn that the power of what he was saying influenced other people. So while you may be a little more rational and measured, it seems as though the following you have built doesn't understand when you're being satirical or you're making a joke. So do you have concerns that maybe they're going to ruin your message?
Not really, only because, you know, I really have no control over what happens after I tell the message. And
see, that's just not true. And this is one of those things where, like, you got to put your fucking big boy pants on at this point. You have to understand, like, what it means to be a content creator. You do have an influence over people. That doesn't mean that every bad thing that one of your followers does is your fault at all. But it means that if you are spouting a particular message that can very easily be interpreted in a negative way, and you don't actively stand up and say, hey, I don't mean that interpretation, and I, like, disavow the people who do. If you're not doing that, then you're not doing the bare minimum of what it means to, like, not be divisive or spread hate. What you're doing is you're just playing a coward's game where you're saying a thing about something and you know it can be open to interpretation, which your interpretation seems to be either a joke or, like, I really hate black people, for instance, or I really do hate women. And you're like, yeah, let's say he thinks that it's just a joke, which I don't even believe, because he was talking before about how he's partially joking about wanting to like look toward to like the Afghan rule, but he's like, part of me is joking, but part of me is serious. Yeah, I don't think it's jokes, but like, let's say there are just jokes. You're making the joke, and then you're allowing people to believe something that they want to believe, which is generally a bigoted perspective. And then you're just be like, well, I was just kidding. Whatever. It's not my responsibility. It's like, you know what it is. But I also think that you're too afraid to say what you actually feel and think. You're pretending that you say whatever you want, but you want to be like super bigoted. So like, but you know you can't, because there's a limit before you get pulled off of whatever platform you're on. So he's saying like he's saying these things as jokes, and then he has a fan base of people that he encourages, and he likes the interpretation that they're. He's like, yeah, you know what I'm saying, and then he encourages that, and he doesn't disavow, because like that's who he is. I mean, like, he probably wouldn't have a fan base after that. There's no rational Nick Fuentes. There's nobody. I don't think that there's any collective of people that go, yeah, you know what? Fuck women. You know what I mean? Like metaphorically, of course, because he's not fucking women. You know what I'm saying? Like this is weird. This is insane.
You know, once again, we can get caught up in like.
But isn't it your movement?
Yeah, it is, of course.
So shouldn't you have some sort of control as someone in favor of authoritarianism?
Well, I mean, I control like an organization, and I control the messaging that comes from me and from my show. But as far as like what my followers take from that, I can't control how people respond to it or how
because it's just art. You can't really control how people interpret art.
they interpret it. And I don't necessarily think that's the responsibility of an author or of a speaker or something.
100% is. You're full of shit. Hey, thank you so much for the sub.
2981 just gifted 1 sub.
Oh, thank you, brother.
But truth teller, that'd be one thing if I was like a politician or something, or if I was leading a club, you know, if like my club member, if I was leading like, hi, this is the Groyper Club, members only, and some guy was out there saying, hey, you know what? You know, he was a representative of something that I led. That would be one thing.
Tell me that you know what. I want to hear what's the limit for Nick Fuentes. Like, what's the way that person could be communicating your message poorly? I want to hear what he thinks about that. Like, I want to hear what he thinks is the wrong interpretation of his message.
But, you know, me going and doing my show, I don't even know who's watching it. It's, you know, it's a mass audience online, and they can take that and do what they want.
You'd be surprised with saying like, hey, I don't like this. I don't like racists. How that much that can actually impact your content, especially if you're saying very edgy content. Like it will, like if you're like, yeah, I don't like people who think this way about my message or take this message and interpret it this way, you'd be surprised how many people you would impact on that. Like it is your responsibility. Like I did genuinely, like what the fuck?
Well, and you know, the most that I could say is clarify my views where there's ambiguity or where people are taking it out of context. But you know, I think it gets away from the duty and the obligation in this time of people to tell the truth. The onus is always on the truth teller. We live in a corrupt society of lies and deception, and whenever anybody tells the truth, it's like, well, but that's offensive. Well, but don't you think that's not, you know, really strategic? Or
I feel like that's not a hot take. Saying that we live in a society that's very corrupt, that's not yeah. There's no way that people. You're like, yeah. You know, like, for instance, there's conversations around politicians and whether or not they should be able to like fucking trade stocks or whatever, because they can make policies that have like profound impacts on it. Yeah, that's a great conversation. That's very corrupt in my opinion, because you can make a policy that could just like line your pockets. Apparently they do much better. If you're a politician and you have stocks, apparently their returns are much higher than non-politicians. I don't know if that's true 100%, but I'm pretty sure it is, my understanding. Like, yeah, that's corrupt to me. That's corruption to me. No one's going to be like, what? Yep, Papa Gut. I also hate black people. Like, there's no interpretation. Yeah, Papa Gut, you're right. We should take the rights of women away. No one's going to fucking interpret what I just said negatively. So you're not saying, hey, there's corruption in some capacity. You're saying something fucking dumb, in your opinion, based, right? T-pose based. And people are like, yeah, Nick, I love it when we're bigoted. But they're just joking. You know what I'm saying?
I think people are going to mistake that and take that out of context. It's like, I'm more worried about the fact that we're in this empire of lies, and we got to tell straight up and to some degree have faith in the message and have faith in people that, you know, it's going to go and do what it needs to do.
I'm interested why you say that you and your following are oppressed.
Well, I mean,
yes, thank you. Thank God. I'm very curious about that too.
What's happened to me in particular over the past 5 years. I mean, I'm probably the most censored person in America or in the world. I'm so thoroughly banned. I talked about this on Slightly Offensive. You can't even search my name on TikTok. Like, I'm banned from TikTok, and you can't search Nick Fuentes. It says that's a hateful term. I made a music playlist on Spotify for the summer. Songs, you know, Miley Cyrus, Radiohead, whatever. And they banned the music playlist because I made it. I'm banned from Twitter, Facebook, every social media. I'm debanked. They closed one of my business checking accounts last week. Didn't even tell me. They just sent the account balance and a check in the mail. I logged into the app. Your account doesn't exist here anymore. I'm on a no-fly list. And then you add to that.
They took your money. The feds took your money, too.
Yeah, and then the Fed seized $500,000 from me earlier this year. So, you know, it goes on and on. And it's also in the conservative movement.
I mean, like, listen, maybe there is a lot of corruption, but I'm just curious, why are they doing that? There's no way that there's just a conspiracy against Nick Fuentes specifically. This guy seems to be a lot worse than I think. That's the only thing I can think of, and that's just my rational brain. Or maybe he really is the most oppressed group. I mean, is he a gamer? Does he play video games? Maybe he's the most oppressed group in the world.
But like, I'm also on the blacklist for CPAC.
No, if you're banned from TikTok, you did something very bad. No, TikTok will ban you for fucking everything. TikTok is a joke of a platform.
My name is on a list at CPAC where I can't enter.
That's whatever. They're gay.
Yeah, they suck.
The conservative people don't want it. Well, because you're fucking insane. I mean, I understand why CPAC wouldn't want you, because you fucking don't represent their message. You're currently on a YouTube channel, though, right? Like, you're talking on someone's YouTube.
I'm not really missing anything. Going party with Lady Maga
the people
and
who run
Caitlyn Jenner.
CPAC, I don't know.
It's Eric's wet dream. What? A weekend with Lady Maga?
No.
Your face is just so.
He's like, I'm gonna say, like, it actually makes me laugh because this is actually the true statement. Is that's why when you actually listen to Nick, not just out of context, it's like you listen to someone like Eric and it almost sounds like the same thing. Obviously, with different, like you said, different variations of the right wing, so still slightly different. But it's like it is true though. This is why sometimes it's like sucks to be a white commentator. The shit you can get away with when you're black, like it's like literally Sav was just like on the show, like I get in trouble, get a strike, anything like I say anything, and Sav was just like on the show, she's like, you know what? I am a bigot. I am a homophobe. I don't. There's like a couple gays I like, and overall, I'm just done with these people. And I was like, literally would get a strike if I was like make that claim. But Sav's like, someone's watching, like, little brown woman. It's okay, you're oppressed. You can say what you want. And that's like the funniest shit. It's like even when you go on, like we were talking about that, like the black people on Twitter talking about genociding the white population, and then it was like that just stayed online. It was like
I mean, I could generally agree with some of that. Like there is a bit of a double standard. We police white people more, which is I think the policing is fine. It's just that we don't police other people to the same standard. Sure, but now I'm a fucking racist for agreeing with a part of a point.
all right, whatever. That's completely cool. Like, I have a video playing that on YouTube, and they're like, "That's cool. Keep that one up. It's on this show." And then if you mirrored that, like if you're a white guy and you just like say half the shit that Brandon says, like Brandon just says stuff, I'm like, "All right, we can get in trouble for this."
Apparently
just on
not.
that. No, but it is.
Oh, do not tempt fate.
But no. What I was gonna say is like this is what's interesting is that like with Nick, it's that
no, but I still want to know why the audience is oppressed.
That's what I'm
Why are
saying.
they
though. Wait,
oppressed?
that's what I'm saying about the oppressed thing is that the attacks, like we were talking about this,
why
that
is
you
the audience oppressed?
are a target, and once they choose that you're a target, then they'll just do everything to make an example of you, and that's what I think the oppression was. Is that it's like, look, Nick made some Jude.
But I thought that Nick was okay with the authoritarianism. Except it's left leaning authoritarianism. Okay, so like by his logic, if Hassan was banned, that would be okay because it's somebody he disagrees with. Like what? You know, well, I don't think Hassan is quite the polar opposite of him, but you get my point, right? Because he said he was fine with the whole, dictator shit. Is that the term? Whatever.
Jokes. He has some opinions on Israel, and he said the N-word on his show. So we're gonna make sure that everyone sees that if you step out of line, we're gonna use this guy as an example, and we're gonna say the Groypers are the equivalent of Nazis. And now it's like even if you're
why didn't you say the N-word? I don't understand. Like, what's the fucking obsession, bro?
black or you're a Jew or you're a part of it, doesn't matter if you're a woman, it does not matter because we're going to make this group the example. And so we'll take away every
they did ban Hassan. Yeah, they banned Hassan for saying cracker. So no, true. Cracker. Sorry. Don't ban me.
Part of your humanity to interact in life. And they use these people as examples. So it doesn't matter if Eric said the same thing that you said, you're going to get in trouble for it, not him. For whatever, it doesn't even matter if you're white or male, whatever you can say, simply because now Nick Fuentes is the target and the example and the scapegoat on the right wing, even like where his name's like a curse word, where people, people told us we're retarded for having him on the show, because if it's like bringing someone on, it's like, oh no, I'm gonna like bust into flames or something like that. Who gives a shit?
Well, at the end of the day, I feel like if there's ideas, right, that Elijah has that I disagree with. There are ideas that actually I don't really disagree with a ton of your ideas. You're pretty good, Eric.
I like you guys.
Eric, I like when you're here. I sit here just nodding. But no, there's things that, as people even on the right wing, we all disagree amongst ourselves. And it's funny because, yes, do I think some of your ideas are not my favorite? For sure. And I would hope that they would never be enacted because I think that they would be disastrous in practice. But that's okay because they're not in practice as yet. But the thing is that I've never understood this entire deplatforming and depersoning thing, because at the end of the day, the reason why I'm prepared to ask you questions and legitimately just hear you out, because like I said, I had no basis of who you were until just now, is because if you've got a shit idea, then we can shoot it down with a better one. And vice versa. If I have a shit idea, you can shoot it down with a better one. Fine, fair enough. But I am.
It doesn't seem to work that way, though, because we have a lot of people with a lot of shit ideas that are very popular. So I'm just saying.
Interested. Why are you, I get the when you say oppressed.
But I feel like we cross a line. I think society's okay with the line of like we don't like Nazis. Like I haven't seen any of the Nazi shit, but we don't like sexism and like racism. I feel like there's no way. And listen, I haven't personally seen like the shit that would get Nick Fuentes deplatformed, but I just feel like I haven't seen any other conservative get like censored to this degree. And so, I mean, even like Crowder isn't as censored as Nick Fuentes, right? That's like even Steven Crowder isn't as censored as Nick Fuentes. And Steven Crowder, in my opinion, is pretty bad. Like I would be understanding if they completely removed him off of YouTube. Yet he's on, which is fine. Like I'm not saying he should be removed at all, but what are you doing? What are you doing? Did he get banned again? Okay, whatever. But you think you understand my point? Like, what the fuck are you doing that's getting you banned?
And the fact that you have been depersoned, I think is disgusting. What's happened to you? And I think it's disgusting what they've done to Laura Loomer. I think it's disgusting what they've done to Milo Yiannopoulos. Because again, if you have ideas, shoot them down with their
Owen
ideas.
Benjamin.
There's tons of them. Yeah, there's tons of people. The fact that like even when Chase Bank started just closing people's accounts, they did that to Laura Loomer. It's revolting to me.
I remember that started a lot of that. Like
I'm
James
banned
Alsop got
from
too.
Uber, and that is very annoying.
Yeah,
that is very annoying being banned from frickin' Uber. I'm just like, that's the only place I'm.
What are you all banned?
I'm not. Only poor people use Uber. Fuck you. Just kidding.
From?
But I want to know why you're.
Only poor people drive for Uber. I'm just fucking kidding.
Audience is
literally
oppressed.
everything. Why my audience?
Why are they oppressed?
Because first of all, we have attitude. We've got grit. We're real sort of like Groypers with attitude. I think that's kind of what people like about us. Firstly, I'll just say, some people say, oh well, the Groypers are too antagonistic. I think that's the reason why people like them, because we are energetic. We're not like these baby conservatives.
Crowder's right here, bro. He's not banned. Even this guy's not banned. So I'm just saying. I mean, or maybe he is. He hasn't been up in 5 days. Did he get like a temporary ban? I don't know. Why are they all banned from something? What the fuck are they doing that's getting them banned from Chase Bank and Uber?
That are, they show up to these college Republican meetings with like their pocket protector and they're like, I really like Josh Hawley and I like common good originalism. And Groypers are like, it's America first, bitch. And like, we like that. But the reason why they're oppressed is these are young guys. These are young, virile, like in so many cases, teenagers, teenage, 20 something. A lot of people think they're mostly white. There's a lot of Hispanics. There's a lot of black guys. They're mostly guys. And,
maybe.
Their whole lives, they have been oppressed. They've been oppressed by, their parents, their libtard parents. If their parents are divorced or overbearing moms, oppressed.
Oh, what? The fuck are we talking about? This isn't... I wouldn't really consider this oppression. This is pretty normal.
By the education system, oppressed by the media. Everything's been taken from them. Their movies, their video games. The women have been alienated and turned against them.
I don't really take the oppression of children very seriously. So, just saying, bro.
Everything's been taken away. And, the big problem, I think we're...
How are you jerking off this audience when you don't even think that people, like young people, should be able to vote? You think that they're dumb? You think that you're admitting that your audience is like really young... then you just talked about how young people are too dumb to vote. What the fuck's happening? How do you... we shouldn't reach... You're oppressing your own audience through your views. I'm so fucking confused. This is insane. Also, most parents are like more conservative than their kids. What the fuck?
The antagonism arises from is then you've got this conservative establishment, which is not, I wouldn't say it's the people in this room. I don't see a lot of establishment in this room, but when you see a lot of these pundits or people on Fox News, excluding of course Tucker and other places, they sort of talk down.
Oh fuck, he likes Tucker. Shit. Every day there's a little more proof that Tucker's not good. What the fuck?
To these people and tell them that the real solution is something like, learn to code, get a job. Men just aren't doing their part. Like, for example.
Yeah, learn to code. I mean, if you can learn to code, it's a good idea. If not, we should implement some kind of a UBI or maybe like a negative income tax. But it's a good idea to do. It's a very good job security.
When it comes to the women conversation, it always comes back to, well, men just aren't good enough. You need to put down the video games and stop doing this and and it turns into this sort of nagging.
That's your bar. You got to put that on the video games. Maybe you should do that, bro.
Thing. And so the reason why my followers particularly are hostile to the conservative establishment, it's sort of like, we're in dire straits, young men, and the people that supposedly represent our side don't represent us and don't appreciate us and are not really talking about our real problems. And that's where a lot of the antipathy comes from. And
what's the problem, bro? All you've done is complain about women having rights in this whole fucking show. What's the problem?
I'm sort of like an avatar of them. I'm like them. I'm of them. I'm just another...
The Last Airbender or the James Cameron version? I'm curious.
One of these Zoomers, just more talented and a genius. And so they see me as like, as an avatar who has been, I've thrown myself into the machine and people see what's been done to me. And it's sort of like they feel it, they see it, they relate to it and they feel it. And so it's sort of like me, it's like I'm Joker, in like that movie.
But again, I guess my thing too...
I'm Joker in that movie from the movie Joker. I think he really thinks he's the Joker. I'm surprised that his fans didn't shoot up the movie theater. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's Joker.
Sort of like I was saying before though, I mean, take someone like me, for example, right? The way that I got into politics was through men's rights. And that's something that I really care about because I love men and I care about them being treated fairly, particularly in the court system and particularly when it comes to fatherhood and what have you. And I really care about that. And these are things where back in Australia, I've had marches, I've contributed a lot of money to the issue. Like I've done things that I think might help push the envelope. I talk about this a lot on my channel. With some of your views, again, you might alienate a lot of people who would otherwise be ready to support you and your followers. And if you are oppressed like you think you are, then you are alienating particularly women. There's so many women you don't realize who really, really wants the best for men. And I simply don't understand this, let's sort of push women to maybe the corner in some capacity. When, like, again, otherwise people like me and other anti-feminists...
When you say that, you mean, like, take away their right to vote.
Women are like, yep, cool, like, let's fight for men's rights because we care about that.
Yeah.
I mean, is that not problematic?
This is problematic. I mean, see, this is why I have to be the way that I am, because I break the mold. If you want to watch a show that, what you're asking for is pandering. If you want a show,
I'm not.
You kind of are.
I'm asking you, is it not? No, because framing is everything, right? You can promote an idea.
It's like respecting people. What? I'm so confused, dude. What
that
am I
might be
doing
inaccessible
in my life?
to people when
What
you
am I
say, yeah,
doing?
we should just cut all the tails off the cats. And people go, no, that's a horrible idea. But if you come in, you go, look, it actually helps with this, that, and the other, and you actually provide reasoning for many of your viewpoints. People go, okay, that's actually not so psychotic. Yes, I can.
Yeah, she called herself anti-feminist. I mean, there does seem to be an issue when it comes to like when it comes to court cases and like custody with men. So I get it.
With that, but if you're like, yeah, women, this or I actually, because again, I don't have any sound bites from you saying things about women, so I'm not going to put words in your mouth. But if you do have some sort of bizarre opinion towards women that might not be based in reality, but rather from, I don't know, maybe a negative experience, maybe trauma, I don't know what your background's like. And I'm saying like maybe there's some issues here that need to be...
His sister probably wouldn't fuck him, honestly.
I have a good example
especially
of this.
for some of your audience. I'm assuming that they've not had particularly nice experiences in life so far. But rather than going into the world being angry and trying to bash people because they don't 100% align with you, I don't understand how that's pushing the envelope or helping anybody.
But that's not it. We're not bashing people because they don't align.
Do you read the stuff that your people say? And they make it personal too. They're not saying you've got a shit idea. They attack you as a human being.
See, this is what I'm talking about. It's just sort of like this, like, don't you think that's problematic? Like, don't you think like, women like me are... it's like, listen, we don't have time for political correctness. We don't have
It's not
time
about
to
being politically correct. It's
pander
about
to the
demonizing
feelings of women.
50% of the
We're not
population.
demonizing them. Listen, we are more
Do you read
based
your own
than
comments?
anybody.
Do you read your own comments?
I read my comments.
So you're aware.
We're more based than anybody? Like, how is that a metric? Like, what? You don't understand. We're just fucking based. Okay. All right. I know what that means, all right? Based just means you just hate non-white people. I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I know I'm very based. People say it to me sometimes in the chat. It's not a good thing to be based, like all jokes aside.
Aware of how these people feel about women.
Yes.
And women's just the example. I'm sure that they have.
Wait,
shitty opinions towards a myriad of other
I
people.
want to cut in here and say this. This is actually important. This is what my wife noticed. She's a good woman. She stays at home. She doesn't want to work. I think she's a very she's what I wanted in a wife, right? I think it's kind of actually what you said like, for a woman. Like I always joke.
No,
like,
just wants
everything.
to make a bunch of little children. And
Yeah, but
He
it's
wants to do
like,
the Epstein thing.
that's
No, he wants to do like the Jeffrey Epstein. He just wants to clone
no, but
him.
like I don't really think that men and women were like really made to be
maybe in a
friends.
couple years, Nick, you'll be able to just drop your sperm into a thing, and then a baby will be.
Honestly,
No women required.
You can do that already.
Much
but,
better, yeah.
Yeah, but my point was what I thought was interesting,
But
especially
then who's going to raise the kid? Nick's not going to raise a kid. He wants the woman to suffer through his penis and then fucking take care of the kid afterwards and be left alone.
with like young dudes is I went to a convention for the American Populist Union in Florida, and what was interesting was these are just a bunch of young dudes. One thing that my wife noticed was that because she had just stopped by to bring me something that I forgot in a piece of sound equipment or
Why so many young dudes?
something like that, is that she was saying like while she stood there was that the young boys seem to be they seem to be anti-women or bitter at women rather than like, hey, I'm gonna actually, like you said, like I'm gonna live a society where I'm gonna make money and I don't believe in egalitarianism. I don't think women and men are traditionally friends in the way that society says they are, and I don't think that husbands and wives have to be friends in the way that you think they are, and that there's a place for women. And even traditionally when couples hung out, the men hung out together outside and barbecued and did whatever they went to the gentlemen's clubs, not the current strip clubs, but like actual male spaces, and women had their own female spaces, and there was this together but separate, ideology. And she was saying that she just goes, I'm just nervous, right, as a woman, that like rather than men trying to become strong men that would attract a traditional woman who wants to stay in her place, that it becomes a movement, like she was saying, that is just about being it comes across anti-woman, not pro-traditional.
I mean, listen, I don't believe in that movement, but that makes a lot more sense. Like if you think that women should stay at home and be like whatever, fucking baby makers and all that, and then you'd be that man. Like, wow, be the change you want to see, baby. Be the change. Me personally, my wife's my best friend, so I don't give a fuck. I do everything with my wife, and I'm very happy. Actually, I'm very happy with it. It's a lot of fun. And she actually is a little bit of a traditionalist. We're just very good. Like she cooks for me. She goes to work. And she comes home. She cooks for me and she cleans. She's great. Actually, it's fucking. I just have to hang out with her sometimes and fuck her. So it's pretty good.
A woman,
right?
And that's all I think she was trying to say. I thought it was a fair observation.
And she enjoys doing those things for me. She enjoys doing those things for me. That's what I want. I want a little bit of a traditional. I want like I want my wife is like a younger mommy. You know what I'm saying? I just want a younger mommy. Take care of me. That sounds fucking so cringe. But, yeah.
From my wife of like, like not that they need to create the space or a car is for driving. They don't need to have women in here. They don't need to invite women. They can ban
Mommy
women.
good.
Who cares? But she was just saying that like a lot of these young guys she spoke to were just like, haha, shut up, bitch, you're a woman.
Yeah.
Rather,
Yeah.
which is fair if you're like 21. But when you're like when you start to get older and you want to.
It's a little bit old for that to be fair. I mean, maybe when you're 13, 21. When you're a grown man, it's okay to tell a woman to shut the fuck up, bitch. You're dumb. But once you get a little bit older, like you're in your 30s, it's like, well, I feel like 21's it's a little too generous for being a fucking incel cuck already. It's a little weird.
When you're like, quiet, bitch.
You think?
Excuse me.
But I'm saying that you actually take the authority and not just like say you have it. It's like you live it out in your real world with your wife, and you actually provide her the home, and you give her the place and the position to be in her place, type of thing. It's like, well, women should be in their place. Well, your job is to provide that place. Like we're supposed to marry them and give them the home so that you wanted them to stay home. Well, who's giving them the home? It's a man who knows what the fuck he's doing. So like it's like I see that instead it's just like a woman need to be somewhere. Well, what? Where are the women going to share? Your bedroom in your mom's house? Like where are the women going to? You want them in the kitchen? Which kitchen? Who's giving them the kitchen? And like that's what I worry about too with some of these like younger movements. It's very based and cool, but not always based in reality.
Yep.
I think it is based in reality because
Based in cool or in what the fuck was that? I mean, like that was a hell of based in cool, but not based in reality. Okay, that's an interesting slogan.
again, it's all contextual, which is to say that, look at the society that we live in, which is like this insane, shrill, shrieking, feminist society. And it's within the context of this where my show is a place where it's like men talking about women, how we really feel, not pandering to them like they're a voting bloc, not pandering to them like we need.
I feel like you should step outside of the internet world. Like I understand that the internet world's leaking into our world, but like that's not the real world right now. It's just not the real world, bro. It's not like a shrieking feminist place. Not at all. I'm just saying.
like we necessarily need their approval or need to win them over or something. My show's a show for men. Politics.
It's a show for boys. You've even admitted that.
My opinion is really the sort of, it's a domain of men. And I'm speaking to men politically on the nature and the role of women. And the sort of attitude towards women
you
is,
don't know
let's see here, can I finish here? I mean,
Yes.
I've heard this now.
You don't know the role of women. You don't understand the nature of women at all. You don't even know what a woman is. You just know your mom and your sister, people who have to like you, like family, you have to like you. They don't understand.
The point is really to sort of tell men about the place of women. And you're right, Elijah, men need to put women in their place, but first we've got to destroy this pedestal that women are put on by honestly both like feminists as well as simps, because there's sort of two sides to it. On the one hand, you have these like male feminists that say like, oh, women are the same as men, and like, hey, you go, girl. If anything, I'll be the one in the kitchen. And then you've got these simps that are like, m'lady, she's more pure than me, she could do no wrong. And it's like, well, let's think about how ancient people thought about women. Let's think about how people hundreds of years thought about women. They didn't idealize them. If anything, in the 19th century, they thought that women were more promiscuous and women were more sort of primal.
Bro, what I just don't understand. Like back then, we owned women. Also back then, we didn't have fucking fleshlights. I don't understand, bro. There seems to be a correlation between treating everybody like people and technology. I don't know, bro. I don't fucking know. I'm so confused. Bro, you know that they are developing a VR. As I saw, this is fucking crazy. VR, where you just put the VR on, and then, like, you don't even need gloves, but you can feel the things you're touching because it uses, like, fucking ultrasonic waves or some bullshit. Bro, we're talking about the next generation of porn, bro. We're not even going to need to buy a silicone apparatus, bro. I don't know why I'm so horny this stream, but I'm fucking, the technology is insane, dude. It's just crazy, bro. It's crazy.
And animalistic and less rational and these kinds of things. And they didn't see women as like divine, the best thing in the world. They saw them as like,
I don't see women as the best thing in the world. I mean, I feel like that's a very small group of people who think that women are good. The women suck. Women can suck a dick. I'm just kidding. No, but women are like, they're just like, yeah, women should have equal opportunity. Most people are that way. Like, even the women I've met, they're just like they don't even care about sexism. They're just like, shut the fuck up, leave me alone. I don't know.
reproduce. And then that's kind of their play in society. And so my show is with a mind towards basically destroying this feminist frame. And that goes for the whole thing. People come to me and they say, you're alienating people, it's provocative, it's whatever. And that's really sort of intentional in the sense that everybody has this liberal, feminist, sort of anti-white frame. And, my show is offensive. It's more than slightly offensive. It's very offensive.
That's why you're not on Blaze TV.
That's right.
I feel like none of that applies to me, and I'm not like this fucking SJW crazy fuck. Like some progressives don't even like me. They think I'm too conservative. It's crazy. I don't understand. But like, mostly people don't give a fuck.
That's right. That's why I'm on Cozy TV, not YouTube or D-Live. It's with a mind towards destroying the frame. And, I don't know that like if I were the president, I wouldn't be saying, shut up, bitch, from the Oval Office. But the point of my show is to really change the whole conversation and change attitudes. And so I don't even have it in mind of like, gee, what are women going to think of this? Like that. If I were to do that before my show, it wouldn't be the same show. It would be cringe.
But neither of us.
Hey, what if I respected people? It's cringe. Go.
Elijah and I do this every day, right? And neither of us, when we talk, think, is this going to offend women? I mean, neither of us think about, is this going to offend men, or is this going to offend black people, or is this going to offend... No, we just
definitely
say
have to think about what we say more than he does, though, I will say, because like, this too, is like, because you stream on multiple platforms, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that sometimes, like, where you can take things further than people think you can take them, but you also know, like, the 5D chess thing, kind of like, I mean, clearly, if you become too hot of a target, like, eventually, like, you get a strike and you have to chill for a second, because you're like, I gotta chill for, like, a second, and get the heat off, and then move in that position. But, like, Nick's in a position, which I noticed, is that he's got nothing else to lose except maybe being put in prison or being shot.
Well, but
which is, like, slightly different.
To Sydney's point a little bit, though, Nick, how is that attitude any different than what liberals are currently doing to the right? In that they're saying, we don't care if we offend them, we don't care if we alienate them, we want to institute what we want. We want to break down the nuclear family.
Yeah, well, liberals are winning.
Our structure.
Liberals are winning.
So you're saying they have a winning strategy. You think that's something we should emulate?
Yes, and not in the sense of the content of what they say, but in the strategy. Yes, liberals, I should say like Democrats are alienating voters with some of the stuff that they say, but yeah, liberals go out there and they say, here's our worldview. Like, we don't care if this offends. Like, how about Seth Rogen and Sarah Silverman? They're putting out this abominable Christmas special. It's just the most Jewish thing you've ever seen.
19,000 dislikes.
Yes,
on
no, it's more than that. It was like over 70,000.
No.
Yeah, 72,000.
Okay.
And they turned off the comments and turned off the likes. Because, all those, Eric was writing YouTube and but telling them how much he was upset about the dislike attacks that were happening.
Yeah, that's
you saw that though, right? Like how they came into the defense of that movie because it was like elves flashing Santa or some bullshit, and it was like disgusting. It's weird. It's also weird too. Like cartoon porn is a weird thing.
Yeah, it's repugnant. And but the point being is like, that we should emulate.
What the fuck just happened? I guess I have to look into that.
That's sickness. But it goes to show the sort of brazenness. Liberals, I hate liberals. Oh, I hate liberals so much. And I'm not liberal. I'm not a classical liberal. I'm not a left. I'm right wing. I'm illiberal. I'm anti-liberal. But the way that they approach this is they're like, we want the moon and the stars. We're coming for your kids. We're coming for everything. We are going to dictate how society goes. And conservatives are sort of like, well, what's your point of view? Well, let's reach a middle ground. Well, and like that attitude is just, it's lethal. Because if we believe that like, we're in the struggle of good and evil, then there can be no quarter for evil. There can be no quarter for these
Yeah, but
sort
what
of
about people like me who think that some of your views might? I wouldn't say evil. That's not terminology I would use. But what about people like me who are on the right who think I don't like?
But are you on the right? Really?
Yes.
What would you say is right? What would you say is right wing? What would your
I think you
definition
need to be
be?
more specific.
Yeah, you have to hate women if you want to be conservative, honestly, on the right.
What is right wing? Do you say you're right wing? What
Oh, Seth Rogen made a cringy Christmas movie? Okay, well, Seth Rogen's a cringe fuck, so.
does that mean to you?
Well, I certainly don't align in really any capacity with the other side of things. So where does that leave me?
Well, I mean, to get back to the origin of the term right and left wing comes from the French Revolution and the National Assembly.
aware.
You know, for people that don't know, the supporters of the monarchy on the right and the liberals are on the left. And
She is making him look really fucking dumb, to be honest with you.
it gets to this idea of preserving the old way of doing things. You know, what you're talking about, which is, go ahead.
No,
you
sorry.
jump in.
No, it's all right. You
It's,
keep going.
you know, like not the left is not really sufficient. It's a very
You think she wants to fuck him? You think she's getting horny for Nick Fuentes? You think this is like the birth of a beautiful, weird romance? Do you think so? I think maybe.
very sort of specific thing about hierarchy, authority, about differentiation, which is something you were talking about earlier, differences between groups, between the races, between the genders, these kinds of things. And so, I don't necessarily know, and I'm not saying this to be antagonistic, but I think it's presumptuous to say necessarily that we're 100% both right-wing or on the same page or have the same definition of right-wing. Because you say, well, I'm right-wing and you're alienating me. And it's like, well, I would
never
contest
said you were
that.
alienating me, but I would say I disagree with a number of your views, and I would hope that they would never come to fruition, is what I hope. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's to say that this is why I don't call myself a conservative, because by many definitions of the puritan conservatives, if you don't 100% fit in their framework of what they deem a conservative to be, then you are not a conservative, and they will X you out. Fair enough, if that's what they
You
want to
become
do.
a California conservative.
Yeah.
I heard that's really popular these days.
So I mean,
Call back.
it's I don't know how to answer that question, because I think you need to be more specific when you ask it. But if there's no better term. I mean, you want to come up with a better term for me, fine. But I would say that, believe it or not, there's probably a multitude of things that you and I align on, but obviously the big ones we don't, or several of the big ones we don't. But this is to say that, I mean, just because I'm not a conservative doesn't mean in some capacity that my views
Trying to say, are you quiet because you agree, or are you just listening?
No, dude, look, I'm not the one to. I don't get. Y'all know how I operate. I don't fucking get offended at what the fuck someone else says. Definitely because.
Okay, well, I mean, that was like my first big introduction to Nick Fuentes, and that's a big no thank you for me. I gotta pee.